When the anxious stops chasing the avoidant. Today, I want to talk about a dynamic that many of us have experienced in relationships but don't always recognize. It's that pattern where the anxious partner is constantly chasing after the avoidant one. It's a cycle that often leads to frustration, confusion, and heart attack. But here's the thing, the moment the anxious person stops chasing, everything shifts. The dynamic changes, and the relationship starts to feel a little different, maybe even a lot more balanced. We often hear that opposites attract, but what does that really mean in the context of relationships? It can mean that the anxious partner seeks closeness, reassurance, and connection about you, while the avoidant partner pulls back, seeks independence, and resists emotional intimacy. The chasing and distancing dynamic can feel like a tug of war where neither side is truly getting what they want. But here's the key, the chasing has to stop for things to truly evolve. When the anxious person begins to stop pursuing the avoidant, they create space for something better: mutual respect, healthier boundaries, and potentially real intimacy. By letting go of the need to control or chase after the avoidant partner's attention, the anxious person becomes empowered to focus on their own growth and self-worth. The avoidant, meanwhile, might begin to realize that they can't keep withdrawing without consequence. Ultimately, this isn't just about two people in a relationship. It's about understanding your own needs and recognizing when you're over it, compromising too much, or losing yourself in the pursuit of someone else. When you stop chasing, you're not just allowing the other person to come to you, you're reclaiming your own sense of self, setting boundaries, and fostering a healthier environment for both partners to grow. So, how do we break the cycle of the anxious person chasing the avoidant? It starts with awareness, self-reflection, and taking steps to invest in your own emotional health. Trust that when you stop chasing, the right kind of connection, one that's balanced, fulfilling, and grounded in mutual respect, will eventually come. In relationships, the dynamic between an anxious partner and avoidant partner often creates a push-pull pattern that can feel like an emotional roller coaster. The anxious individual tends to crave closeness, emotional intimacy, and reassurance from their partner. They need frequent affirmation and connection to feel secure. On the other hand, the avoidant partner values independence, autonomy, and space. They can become uncomfortable or even overwhelmed when they feel too much emotional pressure, or when intimacy feels like it's too demanding. This difference in emotional needs can result in a cycle where the anxious person is continually reaching out, trying to close the emotional gap, while the avoidant partner pulls back, sometimes withdrawing physically or emotionally. The anxious partner's desire for closeness is rooted in a deep need to feel loved and secure. They may seek constant communication, reassurance, or even physical proximity as a way to manage their internal fears of abandonment or rejection. This need often arises from earlier experiences where emotional connection was inconsistent or unavailable, leading the individual to seek external validation in their romantic relationships. The anxious person's primary goal is often to feel seen and understood, and they may attempt to achieve this by staying close to their partner, sometimes to the point of overfunctioning or becoming overly dependent. However, the more the anxious person perceives closeness, the more the avoidant partner tends to withdraw. Avoidants are often uncomfortable with too much emotional dependence or intimacy. They value their personal space and autonomy and may fear being overwhelmed by the emotional needs of their partner. This behavior can stem from early life experiences where emotional closeness was either unreliable or overwhelming. As a result, the avoidant person develops a coping mechanism that centers around emotional distancing. They might create physical space, avoid difficult emotional conversations, or shut down when their partner seeks more connection. The avoidant doesn't usually enjoy or know how to navigate the deep emotional intimacy the anxious partner craves, leading them to retreat further. This push-pull dynamic can be incredibly frustrating for both parties. The anxious partner feels rejected, neglected, and often experiences a heightened sense of anxiety as their need for connection goes unmet. They might interpret the avoidant's withdrawal as a personal rejection, which only intensifies their desire to chase after their partner, seeking validation and reassurance. For the avoidant, the continuous pursuit can feel suffocating or like an emotional demand they are unable or unwilling to meet. They may respond by further pulling away, reinforcing the very cycle that causes so much distress. In these relationships, the anxious partner's pursuit is often misunderstood. They're not necessarily trying to control or manipulate their partner, but instead are trying to alleviate their own internal anxiety by seeking reassurance. The problem lies in the fact that the avoidant, by withdrawing, creates a situation where the anxious person feels more and more out of control, amplifying their need for closeness. This cycle leads to an unhealthy dynamic where neither partner's emotional needs are truly being met. The anxious individual remains in a state of emotional distress, while the avoidant feels increasingly cornered or overwhelmed. Understanding this dynamic is crucial for breaking the cycle. Not when both partners are aware of these tendencies, how the anxious person seeks closeness out of fear, and how the avoidant pulls away due to discomfort with intimacy, they can start to shift their behavior. However, it's important to recognize that awareness alone is not enough. It takes active effort from both sides to change the narrative, break the patterns, and begin creating a healthier, more balanced dynamic based on mutual understanding and respect. Someone who is emotionally avoidant often appears charismatic, independent, and even mysterious at first. They may show affection in small, fleeting ways. Just enough to keep you hopeful, just enough to stir your imagination. But beneath that surface charm lies a painful truth, and what they're offering isn't true emotional connection. It's not the kind of consistent, this isn't about you not, grounded love that creates a healthy relationship. What they're offering is conditional attention, attention that fluctuates based on their mood, their comfort, and their level of emotional availability in the moment. For someone with an anxious attachment style, this inconsistency is magnetic. It creates a powerful emotional high-low cycle. When the avoidant pulls away, the anxious person feels a panic and starts to question their worth. When the avoidant briefly returns, that anxiety is temporarily soothed, giving the illusion of closeness. This relief feels so good, it gets mistaken for genuine intimacy. But it's not closeness, it's a nervous system calming down after stress. And that cycle repeats again and again. Avoidants, whether consciously or not, often struggle with vulnerability. Deep intimacy feels threatening to their sense of independence or control, so they keep people at arm's length. They may say the right things when cornered. I care about you, I just need time, or I'm not ready for something serious. But their actions reveal a pattern of avoidance. They cancel plans last minute, they withdraw after moments of closeness, they deflect serious conversations, and they do just enough to avoid complete disconnection, but never enough to build a true bond. This is what makes their attention conditional. It's given, but only under circumstances that suit their emotional comfort. You'll find that you have to shrink your needs, hold back your feelings, or overthink your every move just to maintain the fragile connection. You're never sure where you stand, and that uncertainty becomes the emo cost of staying close. You end up sacrificing your emotional expression for the illusion of stability. People often confuse conditional attention with love because it mimics some of love's outward behaviors. There may be passion, attraction, even tender moments, but these are not the same as commitment, presence, or emotional safety. True love is not given based on how well you manage your emotions, how undemanding you are, or how much you tolerate. It doesn't require you to earn it through restraint or endurance. Being with someone who gives conditional attention slowly chips away at your self-worth. You begin to believe that love is something that has to be negotiated or won over time, that your feelings are too much, that your needs are inconvenient. This isn't about you not, or that if you were just a little more patient or easygoing, they would finally show up the way you want. But you're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. Someone who truly wants connection won't punish you for having needs, they'll meet you in them. Conditional attention may feel intense, but it will never feel safe. And love that isn't safe isn't love, it's longing. When an anxiously attached person decides to stop chasing an avoidant partner, it's not about playing games or trying to manipulate the situation. It's not some reverse psychology tactic to make the avoidant miss them or come running back. It's something much deeper and more powerful. It's an act of reclaiming personal power. It's the moment the anxious individual says, I can't keep abandoning myself just to keep you. For so long, the anxious partner has been reacting to distance, to mixed signals, to silence. They've been stuck in a cycle where their self-worth is determined by how close or far away someone else feels. Every time the avoidant withdraws, they rush forward. Every time communication fades, they scramble to restore it. The focus is always outward, trying to interpret the avoidant's moods, their intentions, their inconsistencies. It becomes a full-time emotional job, draining and all-consuming. Stopping the chase isn't about punishment. It's not a silent treatment or a cold shoulder. It's a shift from external desperation to internal alignment. It's about choosing to no longer overextend, overexplain, or overgive in the hopes that someone will finally meet you where you are. This is the moment you realize that chasing love that doesn't make you feel safe is costing you the love you owe yourself. This shift isn't easy. For someone used to deriving emotional safety from others, especially those who are hard to reach, standing still feels terrifying. It feels like letting go of control. But that's exactly the point. The anxious person has been trying to control the emotional weather by adjusting themselves constantly. When they stop, they realize that peace comes not from controlling others, but from controlling their own boundaries, their own responses, and their own choices. The real power begins when you stop trying to pull someone closer and start asking, is this what I want to keep allowing into my life? That's not a question you can ask when you're chasing. That's a question you can only ask from stillness. Because in stillness, The clarity starts to rise. You see who shows up when you stop begging. You notice who puts in effort when you're no longer carrying the emotional labor. You discover how much energy you were pouring into a relationship that was always half there. It's a return to self-respect. It's a quiet, steady voice inside you saying, I'm not going to run after someone who makes me feel like I have to prove my worth. You stop reacting and start choosing. And that shift is everything. Because when the chase ends, the dynamic crumbles, and in its place, a new path appears. Maybe the avoidant person notices the change and grows. Maybe they don't. But the real win is not in their response. It's in yours. You step back, not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. And in doing so, you broke the pattern. You proved to yourself that your peace is no longer for sale. Self-respect begins where self-abandonment ends. That truth is often learned through pain, through the slow erosion of identity that happens when you constantly silence your own needs to preserve a relationship. Especially for someone with an anxious attachment style, there's a pattern of making themselves smaller, quieter, and more agreeable just to avoid rocking the boat. The belief is, if I'm easy to love, they won't leave. But in the process of being easy to love, you stop being you. Self-abandonment is subtle. It starts with things like not speaking up when something bothers you, letting texts go unanswered without saying how it makes you feel, telling yourself they're just busy or not ready, or that you're expecting too much. Over time, you begin to rewrite your boundaries to fit their comfort zone. You convince yourself that your emotional needs are burdens, that asking for more consistency, more reassurance, more effort is being too much. But here's what's really happening. You're slowly disconnecting from your own emotional truth. You're trading authenticity for proximity. You're keeping someone close, but at the cost of keeping yourself far away. And what looks like loyalty or patience is often just fear in disguise. The fear of being alone, the fear of losing someone who was never truly yours to begin with, the fear that if you stop giving, the relationship will collapse. That fear is powerful, but it's also misleading. Because no real relationship is sustained by one person abandoning themselves to keep it going. Relationships that require you to constantly suppress your need safe, they're unsustainable. Love that costs self-respect isn't love, it's dependency. The turning point comes when you stop asking, how do I get them to choose me? And start asking, why am I not choosing myself? That's where the shift begins. That's where self-respect takes root, not in a dramatic exit or some angry confrontation, but in small moments of alignment, choosing not to send that second text, saying no to vague plans, expressing what you want even if it scares you, allowing someone to walk away rather than begging them to stay. These are the quiet choices that rebuild trust in yourself. Every time you honor your boundaries, tell the truth about how you feel without editing yourself for someone else's comfort, you reclaim a part of yourself that go lost in the chase. That's what self-respect looks like. It's not arrogance, it's not detachment. It's presence. It's the steady knowing that your worth doesn't rise and from someone else's ability to show up. When self-abandonment ends, clarity enters. You begin to see what you were settling for. You start noticing how little you were receiving in return for all the effort you gave. And most importantly, you realize that being alone with your peace feels better than being with someone who makes you question your value. You don't have to earn love by proving you're low maintenance. You deserve a love that sees you, hears you, and honors you as you are. Choosing yourself doesn't just change your internal world, it changes your entire relational dynamic. It disrupts the cycle that's kept you stuck, the pattern of overgiving, overanalyzing. This isn't about you not, and waiting on someone who can't or won't meet you emotionally. When you begin to choose yourself, you stop waiting for someone to hand you the bare minimum and start demanding more. Not out of entitlement, but out of self-awareness. You stop mistaking crumbs for connection. You stop trying to decode mixed signals and instead look for clarity. You realize that your job is not to someone else's fear of intimacy. It's to protect your own heart from being repeatedly bruised by it. The moment you choose yourself is the moment you stop settling for the idea that love should feel like anxiety. That unpredictability is passion. That silence is normal. You start questioning why it ever felt acceptable to sit in so much emotional uncertainty just to keep someone in your life. You recognize how much energy you were using to maintain hope in something that gave you so little back. When you choose yourself, it doesn't mean you stop loving the other person. It means you love yourself enough not to keep bleeding for something that isn't healing you. This shift doesn't always happen with anger. Often, it's calm. It's a quiet internal realization. I don't have to do this anymore. You stop reaching out first every time. You stop asking for clarity over and getting the same vagueness in return. You stop holding your breath every time they pull away, hoping they'll come back with answers. Instead, you breathe. You stay grounded. You watch. And in that stillness, the truth becomes clearer than ever, and the love you've been chasing isn't here. And more importantly, it's no longer enough. When you choose yourself, you create space. That space might feel empty at first, especially when you're used to filling it with the constant noise of uncertainty. But in that quiet, something powerful happens. New standards form, new boundaries take shape, and eventually new people enter. People who don't need to be chased, people who communicate, show up, and stay. You start attracting what aligns with your growth instead of what echoes your wounds. People fear that choosing themselves means they'll be alone, about you not. But loneliness isn't the result of being single. It's the result of being with someone who makes you feel unseen. When you choose yourself, you actually step into the potential for real connection, one that doesn't depend on emotional gymnastics or staying silent to keep someone around. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming clear. You stop dancing for love and start standing still for it. You wait not in desperation, but in confidence. Because now, this isn't about you not. You know that the person who's meant for you won't make you beg, won't make you shrink, and won't make you chase. They'll meet you where you are, because that's where healthy love lives, in mutual effort, mutual safety, and mutual respect. Absolutely. Here's a compelling conclusion to the speech. When the anxious stops chasing the avoidant, followed by a heartfelt goodbye and thank you note to wrap all together with clarity, strength, and warmth. And so, when the anxious stops chasing the avoidant, the game ends, but the growth begins. It's not a loss, it's a turning point. Because letting go of someone who can't meet you isn't giving up on love. It's making space for a kind of love that doesn't leave you questioning your worth. It's choosing truth over fantasy, reality over potential. It's choosing a connection that doesn't require suffering to feel alive. The anxious person doesn't stop chasing because they've stopped caring. They stop because they finally realizing, I've been trying to prove my value to someone who can't even receive it. And they decide with courage and clarity to walk toward the version of themselves that no longer needs to beg to be chosen. Because when you stop chasing someone else, you start meeting yourself. And that's the relationship that changes everything. Thank you for being here, not just in this space, but in your own journey, for having the bravery to reflect, to feel, and to grow. Whatever brought you here, heartbreak, confusion, exhaustion, know this, you are not too much. You're not broken. You are just remembering your worth. And that remembering, that's sacred work. So here's to the ending of anxious chasing and the beginning of your most powerful relationship yet, the one you build with yourself. Goodbye for now, and take care of your heart. It deserves gentleness, clarity, and love that doesn't run. Until next time.